To chew over there, but we're going back to John Pienaar right now and his guest. John.
Emily, you can see what it's like down here. It's somewhere between a rugby scrum and the first day of the Boxing Day sales. I can see politicians being interviewed. I can see spin doctors briefing journalists. I can see journalists interviewing journalists. I'm going to pick up with a couple of politicians over here, waiting patiently for a few words. Douglas Alexander, Labour's campaign strategy chief in this election. I want to talk about this question that William Hague was raising a moment ago about your party and the SNP and the chances or otherwise of you getting together. But first, your leader, I thought he held his own reasonably well under an awful lot of pressure this evening, just about held his own. But it doesn't matter how well he did, he's not realistically going to turn around the perception of Ed Miliband in the polls. He lags so dreadfully behind. Do you think he's done enough maybe for a few people to make him look a little less like a liability and a little bit more like an asset to your party?
I'd make a couple of points. First of all, there was a serious alternative to David Cameron on the stage this evening, an alternative Prime Minister, and that man was Ed Miliband. But undoubtedly the biggest loser this evening was actually William Hague's former boss, because actually the bizarre judgment of David Cameron not to turn up for a job interview with the British public has ended up going catastrophically wrong for the Conservatives. The biggest loser undoubtedly was David Cameron, and we relish the opportunity for Ed Miliband to have made the case once again that there is a better alternative if people vote Labour in 3 weeks.
So I'm going to come back to you in a second. I'll have a word with Hamza Yousaf, a minister in the Scottish Government, Minister for Europe with the SNP. They've been talking up on the stage there with Emily about the prospect of SNP Labour doing business together. Look, there was never going to be a coalition. For the same reasons, it would be impossible to do a formal deal, whether it's confidence in supply or whatever it is. You're going to be propping up, if you get a chance, and if they get to be the biggest party, you could be propping up Labour, vote by vote, week by week, just waiting for the moment, perhaps when you can pull the rug. Isn't that fair?
No, actually what we're saying, and Nicola Sturgeon put the challenge to Ed Miliband very clearly, if there's enough anti-Tory MPs in Westminster, will the Labour Party join with progressive parties like the SNP to lock David Cameron out of power? Now, when he was asked that question,
but you're not, Hamza, you're not going to, if I may, you're not going to pull down a Labour government at the first chance you get. You'll let them stay there for a while, let them have a run, then choose your moment, yes or no.
Having 4 years of minority government ourselves, we can make life very difficult for the Labour Party.
Quick word from Douglas.
It's just a matter of arithmetic. Every one less Labour MP takes David Cameron one step closer to Downing Street. The SNP have got a bizarre strategy. It's to vote Wales, vote for Clyde, in England, vote for the Greens.
And you, Douglas, you've got a real fight on your hand. That's for sure.
Message. If you want a Labour government, vote Labour. It's as simple as that.
He got his slogan in. We've got to leave it there, Emily.
Give him a backbone is what we'd say.
Over to you.
Thanks, John, very much. Well, with me now for the Liberal Democrats is Danny Alexander. Welcome, Danny Alexander. Thanks for being with us. The Libdems were barely mentioned in that hour-and-a-half debate. I don't think their name was said once. Do you worry that you have not been missed as a party?
Well, we were excluded from this debate by the broadcasters at David Cameron's insistence. We wanted to be here to defend our record in government. And I have to say, I think if you're a moderate centre-ground voter watching that debate, you will have come away pretty alarmed because there was no one there offering a responsible plan on the economy. There was no one there offering the balanced centre-ground idea. And given that neither the Tories nor the Labour Party can win an outright majority, the key issue for a lot of voters is who's going to be holding the balance of power. And on the evidence of tonight, the idea of a Tory coalition with UKIP or a Labour coalition with the SNP is extremely alarming. And that's why I think people need to have the Liberal Democrats to make sure that we can have a balanced, sensible, centre-ground policy, a strong economy and a fair society. You didn't hear that from any of the leaders speaking tonight.
So when you say there was no one there who offered a balanced, responsible look at the economy, does that rule out your being able to work with Labour, who your leader hinted yesterday didn't have a brain? His words, not mine.
Well, it was really striking tonight that Ed Miliband was challenged to explain where would he find savings, how would he pay for some of his promises. He didn't even bother to make an excuse of trying to answer that question. Look, I think this is why you need the Liberal Democrats in the next Parliament in strong numbers, because if you have a Labour Party, you're going to need the Liberal Democrats to make sure that we have a plan that is responsible to sort out the economic problems of this country that we've made a good job of in this Parliament, but there's more to be done. But on the Tory side, you see this immense unfairness in their plans. You see this risk of a Tory UKIP arrangement. Some of Nigel Farage's views tonight, I think most civilised people, will have found absolutely outrageous. Nick Clegg today was talking about the risk of blue KIP, as he called it, the Tories and UKIP working together. Again and again, it makes the argument for, if you want a responsible, balanced, strong coalition government, The only way to get it is through the Liberal Democrats.
Let's talk about some of those arrangements then. Would you rule out a coalition that included the DUP and the Conservatives, or the DUP and Labour?
Well, I'm not going to get into trying to negotiate coalition deals now. What we just,
Well, you have already ruled out working with UKIP, and you talked about
we've just had 90 minutes of 5 party leaders explaining their policies. What I want to get across tonight is that there is a different way, that the country doesn't have to lurch to the extremes with UKIP and the Tories, or with Labour and some of the left-wing parties you heard tonight. We can keep this country on track. We can keep to a balanced plan. But the only way to keep to a balance, a strong economy and a fair society, the only way to make sure that everyone in this country has the opportunity to get on, is to make sure that there are Liberal Democrats involved in the government of the country in future. Because I have to say, listening to that rabble tonight, people will be very worried about the future of their country if any of them are influencing the shape of the government in the next Parliament.
Nicola Sturgeon said coalition government has become an excuse for broken policies. Now, the Lib Dems know that better than anyone.
Look, of course, we haven't got everything right in this government, and of course, when you're the minority party in a coalition, you can't deliver all of your policies, though there was one academic study suggested that 75% of the Lib Dem manifesto has been delivered by this coalition. And on the big things, sorting out the economy, getting the economy growing, creating jobs for the working people of this country, cutting taxes for working people, the signature Lib Dem commitment in our last manifesto. We have delivered and delivered and delivered again. That's our record, and we've delivered in a way that makes sure that people in this country have a strong economy, but also have a fair society too.
Would you be part of a Labour SNP coalition if that came about, or an arrangement, let's say?
Well, look, we've said we don't think that the SNP should be contributing to the government of the United Kingdom. You'd no more put the SNP, who want to break up the UK, in charge of UK policy than you would put UKIP in charge of the European Union. They've all got ideas that would be very, very damaging for this country. But again, look, in a sense what you're expressing is the choice. Do you want Nigel Farage, Nicola Sturgeon or Nick Clegg holding the balance of power? I want Nick Clegg holding the balance of power because it's the only way to keep this country on the straight and narrow.
And if he's not holding the balance of power, if he's not in government next time, he would have to quit as Lib Dem leader.
Well, I fear for the country if Liberal Democrats
are not... Is that a yes or no?
I want Nick to carry on for the leader for many, many years to come. But I fear for the country if Liberal Democrats are not holding the balance. I think a lot of people tonight, hearing from the left-wing leaders, hearing from UKIP and the extreme right policies that they put forward, can see a country that will be dragged off to the extremes unless the Liberal Democrats are there to anchor us in the centre ground.
Danny Alexander, thank you very much indeed. We're live on television on Radio 5 Live. We're at the Central Hall of Westminster, where the BBC's election debate has just taken place. And in amongst the crowds of pundits and politicians is John Pienaar.
Thanks very much, Emily. You can see it's getting busier and busier down here. People going everywhere, spinning this way and that. I've clacked some more politicians from the crowd, a bit like a fly fisherman. Mark Reckless, a UKIP member of Parliament, quite a new one. We were waiting for your leader, Nigel Farage, to come up with some sort of shock and awe contribution, and there wasn't one. Have you run out of momentum and steam and lost your mojo?
Well, he didn't need to, because he was on that stage representing the whole centre as well as right of British politics. It was like a student union debate with 4 people on that stage competing to spend other people's money. Nigel was the only adult in the room actually trying to pull our politics back in a sensible direction.
Okay, quick word from you, Adam Price from Plaid Cymru. Look, when it comes to the leader, Ed Miliband of the Labour Party, he was the only sort of potential Prime Minister of the future up on the stage. Where do you guys fit in? He's called Red Ed by the Conservatives. He's not quite red enough for you, is he?
I think it's a powerfully invigorating moment because, politics has come alive. The monopoly of the old parties has been broken. They're going to stale, sterile politics of the past. We've got the birth of a new high-bandwidth democracy, kind of a multi-party politics for a multi-nation Britain.
OK, and Jean Lambert from the Green Party, where do you fit into the picture? You're part of this progressive anti-austerity alliance. What do you add to it all?
Well, I think what we add to it is certainly, I think, a lot of courage and a willingness to take on some of the issues, whether it's climate change, whether it's immigration, in a positive way that we haven't been hearing at all in this election.
I guess you'll be lucky to hang on to one seat, though. Isn't that the way it's shaking out?
The way it's shaking out at the moment is, yes, at least one, and it's looking good in a few other places too.
OK, nothing wrong with a bit of optimism, Emily.